Hello, third graders. So, when we left off at the end of the last chapter of Holes, we were at the end of part one. And so, we are now beginning part two. So, at the end of part one, there was a big cliffhanger because Kate Barlow, we were learning about, remember, we're learning about Stanley's great grandfather um, and his father, actually, so his great great grandfather, and we're learning about their connections with people in the past and how Stanley came to be cursed in the first place. And so Stanley's great grandfather somehow got caught up with Kate Barlow, and this Kate Barlow woman supposedly robbed him and left him stranded in the desert, at least, or so he believes. And so we're trying to find out a little bit more about who this Kate Barlow is and what her story is. So at the end of the last chapter, Kate Barlow died, and she died laughing because she was basically telling Trout Walker and his wife Linda, "You can dig all you want, you are not going to find anything," because they seem to believe that she has money that she has buried. So that leads me to wonder, how did Stanley's great grandfather get caught up with Kate Barlow if she died? Or did he get caught up with her before she died? And are we going to find that out? Or is that just a rumor? And was she never even involved with his great grandfather? So many questions. We're trying to figure out what is going on. And hopefully, we'll get some answers the more that we read. So, we are going to be back to Stanley now, chapter 29. So, there was a change in the weather for the worse. The air became unbearably humid. Stanley was drenched in sweat. Beads of moisture ran down the handle of his shovel. It was almost as if the temperature had gotten so hot that the air itself was sweating. A loud boom of thunder echoed across the empty lake. A storm was way off to the west, beyond the mountains. Stanley could count more than 30 seconds between the flash of lightning and the clap of thunder. That was how far away the storm was. Sound travels a great distance across a barren wasteland. So there, just so you know, like there's this belief, and I think it's true, that if you count the number of seconds between a lightning strike and the next clap of thunder, the number of seconds in between that tells you how many miles away the storm is from you. I actually don't know for sure if that's even true, but I have heard it before as well. So that's where that comes from. Usually, Stanley couldn't see the mountains at this time of day. The only time they were visible was just at sunup, before the air became hazy. Now, however, the sky was very dark off to the west, and every time the lightning flashed, the dark shape of the mountains would briefly appear. "Come on, rain," shouted Armpit. "Blow this way." "Maybe it'll rain so hard it will fill up the whole lake," said Squid. "We could go swimming." 40 days and 40 nights, said X-Ray. "Guess we better start building us an ark. Get two of each animal, right?" "Right," said Zigzag. "Two rattlesnakes, two scorpions, two yellow-spotted lizards." The humidity, or maybe the electricity in the air, had made Zigzag's head even more wild looking. His frizzy blonde hair stuck almost straight out. The horizon lit up with a huge web of lightning. In that split second, Stanley thought he saw an unusual rock formation on top of one of the mountain peaks. The peak looked to him exactly like a giant fist, with the thumb sticking straight up. Then it was gone, and Stanley wasn't sure whether he'd seen it or not. "I found refuge on God's thumb." That was what his great grandfather had supposedly said after Kate Barlow had robbed him and left him stranded in the desert. No one ever knew what he meant by that. He was delirious when he said it. But how could he live for 3 weeks without food or water? Stanley had asked his father. "I don't know, I wasn't there," replied his father. "I wasn't born yet. My father wasn't born yet. My grandmother, your great grandmother, was a nurse in the hospital where they treated him. He'd always talked about how she'd dab his forehead with a cool wet cloth. He said that's why he fell in love with her. He thought she was an angel." "A real angel?" His father didn't know. "What about after he got better? Did he ever say what he meant by God's thumb or how he survived?" "No, he just blamed his no good, pig stealing father." The storm moved off farther west. along with any hope of rain. But the image of the fist and thumb remained in Stanley's head. Although instead of lightning flashing behind the thumb, in Stanley's mind the lightning was coming out of the thumb as if it were the thumb of God. Sorry, I'm going to read that last two sentences again since I kind of messed it up. The storm moved off farther west, along with any hope of rain, but the image of the fist and thumb remained in Stanley's head. Although instead of lightning flashing behind the thumb, in Stanley's mind the lightning was coming out of the thumb, as if it were the thumb of God. Interesting. Chapter 30. The next day was Zigzag's birthday, or so he said. Zigzag lay in his cot as everyone headed outside. I get to sleep in because it's my birthday. Then a little while later, he cut into the breakfast line just in front of Squid. Squid told him to go to the end of the line. Hey, it's my birthday, Zigzag said, staying where he was. It's not your birthday, said Magnet, who was standing behind Squid. Is too, said Zigzag, July 8th. Stanley was behind Magnet. He didn't know what day of the week it was, let alone the date. It could have been July 8th, but how would Zigzag know? He tried to figure out how long he'd been at Camp Green Lake, if indeed it was July 8th. I came here on May 24th, he said aloud. So that means I've been here 46 days, said Zero. Stanley was still trying to remember how many days there were in May and June. He looked at Zero. He'd learned not to doubt him when it came to math. 46 days. It felt more like 1,000. He didn't dig a hole that first day, and he hadn't dug one yet today. That meant he dug 44 holes, if it really was July 8th. Can I have an extra carton of juice? Zigzag asked Mr. Sir. It's my birthday. To everyone's surprise, Mr. Sir gave it to him. Stanley dug his shovel into the dirt. Hole number 45. The 45th hole is the hardest, he said to himself. But that really wasn't true, and he knew it. He was a lot stronger than when he first arrived. His body had adjusted somewhat to the heat and harsh conditions. Mr. Sir was no longer depriving him of water. After having to get by on less water for a week or so, Stanley now felt like he had all the water he could want. Of course, it helped that Zero dug some of his hole for him each day, but that wasn't as great as everyone thought it was. He always felt awkward while Zero was digging his hole, unsure of what to do with himself. Usually he stood around a while before sitting off by himself on the hard ground with the sun beating down on him. It was better than digging, but not a lot better. When the sun came up a couple of hours later, Stanley looked for the thumb of God. The mountains were little more than dark shadows on the horizon. He thought he could make out a spot where the top of one mountain seemed to jut upward, but it didn't seem very impressive. A short time later, the mountains were no longer visible, hidden behind the glare of the sun, reflecting off the dirty air. It was possible, he realized, that he was somewhere near where Kate Barlow had robbed his great-grandfather. If that was really her lipstick tube he'd found, then she must have lived somewhere around here.